This is going to be a crazy story once you read it, and it's one that's full of betrayals. I don't know where to start, but I'll try and put together everything for you guys to understand. The mistake I made was from when I agreed to go out with the girls and everything ruined my relationship. I don't think that was what ruined it, but it was my friend that did. Hey Redditors, my name is Catherine and I'm 21. My boyfriend is 22 years old, just 1 year older, and his name is Max. I'm an average college student with average grades, and I take my studies pretty seriously. I'm sort of an introvert and I don't like being around people. You can say I'm a shy person because I don't talk to anyone unless they start the conversation first. I grew up in a family of 4 and my parents were really strict. It wasn't like my mom and dad loved each other because they fought lots of time. My brother usually stopped them and they apologized to him, but I just watched the whole drama. The frustrating thing was that they weren't strict to my brother and it was just me. I remember the first time I lashed out at them and asked them about why they were so strict to me, and they told me these exact words: "Because you're a girl and we care about you." Those words upset me to hear, and I didn't know why I had to have a tough life just because I was a girl. I wasn't allowed to go anywhere or meet up with friends, and I felt so trapped with that. My brother, on the other hand, was a free person and could do anything he wanted. I think he was spoiled, but they didn't bother about it. By the time I was 20, I was ready for college, and I was glad that I could finally leave the house. I thought they would have told me to pick the college I wanted to go to, but I raised my expectations too high. They chose the college that was closest to home, so I would be able to come home immediately anytime they give us holidays. But it wasn't that close either. I was still happy I was leaving the house and having time to do anything I wanted. I moved into the girls' dorms and I had one roommate. Her name is Claire, and I felt like she was the complete opposite of me. I didn't talk to her much, but she usually tried starting conversations with me. 3 months passed and I was beginning to open up with Catherine. I observed her during the 3 months that had passed, and I confirmed about her being the opposite of me. Her personality was way different because she was wild, outgoing, and just completely weird, but I liked her that way. I also met another friend at one of the classes I attended, and her name was June. She was just like Claire, and I didn't know how both of them could keep up with my shyness and the way I didn't talk, but they did. June and Claire also vibed immediately when they met each other because they were so alike. 6 months had passed and I was still that introverted type of person because I wasn't used to going out or doing anything much. This was when I met my boyfriend, Max. Did I mention I took study really seriously? Well, yeah, I did. That day I went to the library to get some materials for work and I bumped into someone. I know it sounds like one fairy tale, but it's actually true. It was more like he bumped into me when he was rushing out of the library. He apologized and I said no worries. We met again in class and that was how we began talking. He asked a question and I answered it in class. He came to me after class and said he liked the way I answered the question and he liked smart people. He asked me if we could make study sessions and I agreed. That was how we started dating. He asked me out and I turned him down at first, but then I didn't want to be trapped anymore and wanted to do the opposite of what my parents always said, so I agreed. I didn't know how relationships worked, and I thought at 20 I had not even one boyfriend when people younger than me had already had 3 exes while I had not even one. So it was a great chance and I had my first boyfriend. The relationship was going well and he was a great person. He was even better in bed. Yes, I slept with him and I was happy he was my first. He was so gentle with me and understanding. My parents also said something similar to "don't do it before you marry," but I didn't want to obey everything they said. My relationship with him was going great and it was fun rebelling against my family. June and Claire met Max and we became a whole group, just 4 of us always moving together. I thought things were going to be going great till I finished college and stood up to my parents about how unfairly they treated me, but that plan was soon cut short. I also noticed that Claire was acting weird and asking for information about my boyfriend, but I took it as she was just curious. Max comes from an average family just like me, and he was very smart. He was both an introvert and extrovert, and he was pretty open about everything. He usually spoke his mind, and I liked that about him. I was different from him because I wasn't able to say my mind, but I was able to tell him about how my life had been, and he said he was going to be there. A year had passed since then, and I was still that introverted person who didn't like going out. Max had been asking us to go out on dates, but I told him I preferred meeting him privately than going out because I hated crowds. Because I turned down his offers so much, he stopped asking me on dates. The girls noticed and said they didn't like that about me. June came to sleep over at our dorm that evening around 7 p.m. and they were acting weird. They both faced me and told me we should have a girls' night out. I knew what they were up to, so I told them I was not interested, but they kept pushing and saying we should go. I asked if there was going to be alcohol because I didn't want to drink that, and I'd observed how people acted when they drank alcohol and got drunk. My dad comes back late from wherever he works, and he was always drunk, and it made them fight a lot. My mind was already getting distracted thinking about them, but I snapped back to reality. Claire said there was a frat party happening and the guy's parents were out of town, so that was why they were hosting it. This wasn't the first time they were asking me to follow them to a party. I was used to turning them down. I still contemplated going, but they kept pushing, saying the party was starting by 8 and it was already 7:53. So I felt like I should tell Max I would be going to a party and asking if he would join us. But the girls protested, mentioning that it was a girls' night out, so a guy shouldn't join them. I told them I would be attending as long as I wasn't going to eat or drink anything there because I hated crowds and heard so many parties about these kinds of parties. I finally agreed to go with them and just put on one of my casual clothes. They complained about my dressing, but I said they should deal with it. I wanted to wear what I was comfortable with, and they agreed since I didn't want to go in the first place. I don't know what I expected once we got to the party, but this wasn't it. The noise was the first thing that hit me, followed by the smell of alcohol. I looked at Claire and June, knowing they tricked me, and they just laughed. I was supposed to get upset, but I didn't mind because I knew they wanted me to get a new experience with parties. I was frustrated just a little, and the smell of the alcohol was bothering me. Could you believe we hadn't even entered the house yet, and all this was bothering me? So yes, it was worse when we entered inside. The alcohol smell hit me harder as I stepped in the house, and I felt nauseated. A guy came to greet all three of us, and June and Claire acted so familiar with him, but I felt like I didn't belong. I didn't pay that attention, but I was more focused on the environment I was in. There were people everywhere talking at the same time while there was this blasting music. I couldn't even hear myself speak when I tried to tell June and Claire that I couldn't stay and I wanted to leave. I guess it didn't matter because before I knew it, they were no longer at my side and went off to God knows where. I know I could have just left, but at the same time, I hated this. I was curious to see and observe how this party would go. I was tired of standing, so I looked around the house for any empty seat. I had finally found one, and I was lucky because a guy and a girl had just finished making out there, and they wanted to take it somewhere else. I sat down, and it clicked to me that half of everyone had booze in their hand while half of them were making out. I don't know if it was up to 5 minutes, but I was getting tired and I was bored. I looked around to see if I could find June or Claire anywhere. Claire popped down beside me, and it shocked me. She laughed and she said something, but I didn't hear what it was because of the music. She had 2 drinks in her hand and handed me one, but I just shook my head because I already told her I wasn't going to drink. She moved closer, and I think it was because she knew I couldn't hear her. She put her mouth to my ears, and I heard her say that it wasn't alcohol and it was just like an energy drink. I shouldn't have believed me, but I did. I took the drink from her hand and tasted it. It didn't taste like a normal drink, and it burnt my throat. I haven't taken any alcohol before, so I didn't know what it tasted like. I squeezed my face as I drank it, and I looked at Claire. She was grinning, and she shouted because of the music, asking me if I liked it. The truth was, I didn't hate because it wasn't bad. She said it was a new type of drink similar to punch that I didn't know about, and there was no alcohol, so I foolishly believed her. I finished the drink, and she kept bringing more, and I don't know why I kept on drinking it. I tried standing up after a few drinks, and I lost my sense of balance, which made me fall back down. I was wondering why it happened, and I stood up again, but the same thing happened. That made me realize I was drunk, even when I didn't know what it felt like beforehand. There was someone else that came to sit beside me, and I thought it was Claire, but I was disappointed to see it was not. It was one of the popular guys that Claire and June talked about a lot, and I never seemed to grasp his name. I never thought I needed it, so I didn't pay close attention. Eventually, I realized he said his name was Eric, and he asked me for my name. I didn't tell him because I didn't have any reason to. He placed his hands on my thighs, but I quickly pushed it away because it felt uncomfortable. Perhaps he knew I was drunk and wanted to make out just like the others, but I wasn't going to become one of them. He kept saying things, and I was already getting tired. I wanted to leave and rest my head on my bed because I felt dizzy. I was hoping Claire would come and bail me out, and it was like she read my mind. She came with a smile on her face, but I returned her a frown. She looked at the guy beside me and she grinned, but she knew I was paying him no attention. So she asked the guy if he could please leave so she'll talk to me because I was her friend. He left and she kept grinning, and I asked her what the heck that was all about her. She said she should be asking me because I didn't know how popular he was, but I didn't care about all that. Instead, I complained to her about how I felt about the whole loss of balance and dizziness. I confirmed my thoughts, knowing I was drunk and I was upset with her. She apologized immediately, saying she just wanted me to experience this because I was a shut-in. I won't deny the fact that I was a shut-in, but that didn't give her the right to lie about a drink and tell me to drink it because I trusted her. I felt betrayed, but what I felt wasn't the same as what I was going to feel later, and I had no idea. I was about to tell her about how I wanted to leave because I'd had enough, and that was when the music came to a stop. The host, I assume, who was the guy that came to greet us, shining his teeth to everyone, said we should come together for a game. I wanted to remove myself from the whole thing, but unluckily for me, they were hosting the game at the side where I was sitting, and I didn't want to get up because of how I was feeling. I felt the chair press down and I looked at my side. I scoffed silently because it was this same Eric guy that had sat down. Before I knew it, there were already so many people coming together. I counted at least 15 on them and they began to form a circle. The area was not so big but not so small either. Some of them sat down on each other's laps, while some sat down anywhere they saw fit, mostly on the floor too. I looked around and noticed that there were still a lot of people who seemed uninterested. I spotted June making out with somebody at one corner and I looked away. I knew she was that kind of person because she told me before that she just wanted to be free and not be in any relationship. I spotted Claire sitting on someone's lap, but she was part of the circle. Our eyes locked and she did that same grin she did before. I should have known she was planning something, but my mind was too scattered at that moment. The guy beside me, Eric, kept trying to place his hands on my shoulder or thighs, but I just kept pushing it off. I think few people noticed because I heard tiny laughter towards our direction. The people who seemed uninterested were making it rowdy everywhere, so the guy hosting the party told them to move to another place and shooed them away. He focused on all of us and cleared his throat. I think he was a bit drunk. Well, he said the game we were going to be playing was Truth and Dare. I hadn't gone to parties, but I didn't know this was something they did in parties. I tried standing up to leave, but I wasn't even halfway up and I fell back down. When I sat down, I felt something hard in the place where I was sitting, and I looked down beside me. It was Eric's hand, and I adjusted and pulled it off, and he just chuckled. I knew I was stuck here, so I just continued. The guy hosting it, someone who I never found out his name, and I didn't care much about knowing, gave us drinks, but I just dropped it beside me because I was already drunk. He told everyone to pick a number, and I was the number 6. How the game started was that he asked number 2 Truth or Dare, and the girl chose Dare. He told her to flash everyone, and I thought that was absurd. The penalty of not choosing Truth or Dare was to drink, so I was at a disadvantage. She flashed everyone, and they all acted amazed and laughed. He called number 3 next, and he chose the Truth. The guy asked him if he would cheat on his girlfriend for any celebrity, and he said yes. But the girlfriend was right there, so she hit his head, and everyone laughed. He called 2 more numbers, and I thought he wouldn't call me, but it was my turn. He asked me the Truth or Dare, and I picked the Truth. He asked me what my body count was. I didn't know the meaning of that when I entered college, but I knew it later on. I answered honestly and said 1, but they all looked at me in doubt. When they saw I was joking, they laughed, and I felt embarrassed. Was it so bad to just sleep with one person? The guy called Eric number who was 7, and he picked Dare. He told him to pick anyone in the room and kiss the person. I knew I was in trouble then. Eric immediately looked at me and everyone went, ooh. I shook my head and told them I couldn't because I had a boyfriend, but they all booed me. They told me if I didn't want to kiss him, that I had to drink then. I didn't want to do any, but Claire came beside me and whispered in my ears to just do it. She said Max would never find out since this was a game that was all between us and everyone was matured. I shouldn't have listened to her, but I think I was too drunk so I couldn't think straight. I let out a huge sigh and faced Eric. Someone started chanting, "Kiss him." Then everyone began chanting that. I felt too pressured, so I decided to just give in. I closed my eyes and went in for the kiss with Eric. His lips were softer than what I had expected, not like I was expecting anything. As I was kissing him, I didn't want us to stop. I think it was the effect of the alcohol that did that. He placed his hands on my thighs and moved it up to my waist, pulling me closer, and that made me snap back to reality. I broke apart from the kiss and cleaned my mouth after, wondering what I had just done. I looked at Eric and he had a wide smirk on his face. I never noticed Claire videoing us and keeping her phone as fast as she could so I wouldn't see her. The game went on and I signaled at Claire that I wanted to leave. I was getting more uncomfortable and I noticed it was getting late. She didn't answer at first because she was so into the game, giving some guys lap dances and making out with others. I kept disturbing her till she gave in. We looked around for June in the other room and she was giggling with someone. We told her it was time to leave and she shrugged, but she agreed. They said bye to the people they knew and we left. I didn't know the next morning was when everything was going to get ruined because of Claire. When I got back to the dorm, I threw up and felt bad. I couldn't stop thinking about the kiss because it didn't make me feel good. I was thinking of telling Max about it later, but I thought of what Claire said about it being between us. When I woke up the next morning, I threw up again and had a headache. Claire said it was expected, and I took some painkillers to make me feel better, and they worked. It was already noon, and it was on a weekend, so I was supposed to meet up with Max. I knew something was up when he called me and spoke so coldly to me that he wanted to see me. I told him okay, and I quickly cleaned up and met him at a cafeteria. I went in to hug him, and he blocked me, telling me to sit because he wanted to talk to me. He didn't say anything, but he just showed me a video on his phone. It was a video of me and Eric kissing the previous night. I watched it with shock in my eyes. I knew who was taking this video because of the angle I was in, and I even heard her voice. It was Claire, and I couldn't believe she backstabbed me. He collected his phone back from me, and I told him I could explain. He said he was listening, so I told him what had happened that night. It wasn't my fault because I was drunk, and it was peer pressure that made me kiss him. I asked him who sent the video, and he confirmed my suspicions, saying it was Claire. I tried apologizing to him, saying I kissed the guy because it was a game and I felt nothing, but he was no longer listening. He said he couldn't be with someone who would kiss strangers at random parties, and he broke up with me right there. I said I was sorry, but he didn't listen. I had to confront Claire, so I headed back to the dorm, but she wasn't around. I'm waiting for her right now. Update. Claire came back to the dorm with June in the evening, and the argument was a lot. June was confused since she had no idea about what happened, so I tried to summarize it to her. She asked Claire why she would do such a thing, and Claire admitted that she was jealous of me. That was surprising to hear. She said she envied our relationship and she doesn't regret ending it. I didn't know college was full of traitors, but I learned that. June told Claire she did a terrible thing by making a video and sending it to Max. But Claire kept saying she did nothing wrong because she didn't slam my lips to Eric. I felt hurt about that, but she was right. The holidays were coming up and I needed to leave school grounds for a while, so I went back home. My parents were shocked to see me without informing them, but I just told them I missed home. It was a lie deep down. Claire called me to apologize, but I can't be friends with her, not after she had snitched on me. June is my only friend now, but I don't think I can trust anyone easily. I miss Max, and I shouldn't have kissed that guy just because I was pressured. I guess I learned not to trust people easily or give in to peer pressure.